Today we're going to be discussing the technique obscure wing and some of the more important principles, rules, theories, concepts, strategies, in this case, naming conventions for the technique. So let's start out with the naming convention, the name obscure wing. We have words in Kenpo that mean something different than what they would normally mean in English. Those are called argons. So in this case, obscure means what you normally would think it means, from behind or outside our cone of vision, but we also have an argon for that darkness. But in this case, we chose the word obscure. And the second one is wing. Wing means arm in Kenpo, so that's where we get the name obscure wing. So obscure has a double meaning here. One being where we're bringing attack from, and then two, from how we're attacking them to their outside of their line of vision. So let's get into that a little bit. So if you'll notice, the opponent comes up behind you and puts their hand on you or grabs you. So they're being obscure to you. And all of our attacks that we're going to be doing here are obscure to them. So that's where that naming convention comes in. So now that we got that out of the way, let's talk into what's going on here. We're standing in a natural stance, and what we want to do is obey new rule number 1 to establish our base, and also at the same time we want to get alignment. So if you'll notice, what we want to hit them with is this elbow, and I'm not hitting them where I want to hit them. So what I need to do is gauge my distance off to the side, in this case through width, and then get our alignment for our elbow. Now keep in mind that we have distances here. He could be close to me or further from me. And therefore, since we're gauging our distance, I would have to, if he's further from me, step back at an angle in order to get to change that distance. But in this case, the ideal phase is they're very close to us, so the arm is bent. So therefore, all I need to do is step off to the side to get the alignment that I need. So what I want to do here is I want to get an angle of incidence rather than a glancing angle to try and hit this opponent. Now, if you'll notice what's happening here with the upper part of my body, I'm doing something with my hand and my arm. So what's happening with the hand here could be one of two things. We could either be covering or we could be checking. The difference being covers don't make contact and checks do. So if we make, there's an advantage of one over the other. If I just bring my hand up, if you notice what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to step off and get in alignment, but they might be able to see me hit with this elbow. So if I only bring the hand up, I'm giving them a lot of motion that they can see, and therefore that's somewhat of a telegraph. But if I take my hand and I put it on top, and I've actually physically put it on top a lot, what's going to happen is a psychological effect. Not only am I going to be getting the upper hand physically, but I'm also going to be getting a slight upper hand psychologically by drawing their attention to that hand. And therefore, when I do the step at the same time, that gives me the ability to hit with that elbow without them seeing a whole bunch of motion or without telegraphing. So just keep that in mind. So what happens here is I want to put my hand on top physically as I step and get the alignment and then hit. Now notice what you don't want to do. You do not want to make a cock or separate motion. We want to obey the principle of economy of motion. Or, in this case, don't make a cock or separate motion. So I do not want to bring my hand up and then draw this back, because guess what? I'm giving up all that strategy that I had here about getting the upper hand and psychologically taking them away from the elbow. So what I want to do is come from point of origin. I'm going to leave my hand out of this so you can see it and shoot it straight back. So as I begin to settle into this stance, I'm going to be making contact with the opponent. Okay? So now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to move on to the following 2 strikes. The reason why I'm going to say 2 strikes is because it brings in another concept. We're going from line, and where lines end, circles begin. And then from circles, we go back to lines, and from where circles end, the lines begin. And that brings us to the next 2 strikes. So that brings in the concept of what we're doing here with method of execution. If you'll notice, the first method of execution of the arm is thrusting, which meaning it's coming from low to high, and it maintains contact with the opponent. In other words, it uses depth penetration. Same thing with the hammer fist. It's using hammering, and that means it's coming from high to low rather than low to high, which is the opposite. But it also maintains contact and uses depth penetration. And then the final one is snapping, and that one does not maintain contact. In other words, what it does is it uses reverse motion in order to reverse the line that we went on. So notice we have 3 different methods of execution going on here: thrusting, hammering, and snapping. Now the next concept that we need to bring in here is fitting. So if you'll notice, we're taking our elbow, we're fitting it into their solar plexus, then we're taking our hammer fist and fitting it onto the groin, and then finally, again, that elbow comes up under the jaw in order to hit and therefore fit to the jaw too. So one final thing that we need to talk about here is the fact that we are being left into a fight. Some of our techniques leave us into a fight, some of them do not. In this case, we are being left into the fight. And that gives us the opportunity to do other things as we see fit in order to extend this technique. But we're not going to take advantage of that. What we are going to do is just cross out and cover. So now that we've talked about some of the rules, concepts, theories, strategies of this technique, let's show a quick explanation or demonstration of it. Oh. Hope this video helps you understand the American Kenpo system just a little bit better. Thank you very much.